Hi everyone, Dr. Zu and fellow classmates. My name is Universal Jamil Anna Frankie, and I will begin our presentation by introducing the topic and background of our research. Our study is titled The Impact of Government Spending, Public Investment, Education, Health and Labor Force Participation on GDP growth across selected countries in 2019. The main objective of this research is to analyze how selected macroeconomic factors influence the economic growth of Asian nations. This study is important because understanding this relationship can help policymakers make informed decisions about fiscal priorities and labor policy. We use panel data from selected Asian countries and apply econometric method to examine the long-run and short-run relationship between this variable and GDP growth. Through this study, we aim to identify which indicators significantly affect economic performance and which may require further improvements. With that, I will now pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
So in this part, I will explain about the background of this study. For the first variable, that is GDP growth. So the graph shows that the highest economic growth came from developing countries. Timor-Leste recorded an exceptional growth rate of 24.21% that followed by Rwanda and Ethiopia. Meanwhile, developed nations like Germany and Italy showed growth near zero. So this reflects a significant shift that global economic momentum is increasingly driven by emerging economies. And the second variable, that is government spending. So the countries like Timor-Leste and Sweden demonstrate a dominant government's role in their economies, so with high government spending that relative to GDP. In contrast, countries like Bangladesh and Cambodia have much lower government expenditure. So this doesn't just show the fiscal capacity, but also reflects different income development strategies and priorities. So the third, that is public investment. So the graphic in public investment shows that countries like Ireland and Bhutan allocate more than 40% of their GDP to fixed capital investments, that showing strong commitment to infrastructure and long-term growth. And the countries like Indonesia and China also invest heavily in development. On the other hand, countries like Greece and Pakistan had relatively low investment level, which could hinder their future growth potential. And the number 4, that is education spending. In education spending, the graphic shows that countries like Sierra Leone and Costa Rica prioritize education by allocating over 30% of government spending to the sector. However, some countries such as Timor-Leste and even developed ones like Germany dedicate smaller proportion. So this tells us that high spending doesn't always guarantee high quality education, and the effectiveness of fund use remains critical. And for number 5, that is health spending. So in the health spending, the graphic shows that countries like US had the highest health expenditure at 16.67% of GDP. So its system still face criticism over affordability and access. And the developing countries like Indonesia and Pakistan allocate less than 3%, reflecting either fiscal limitation or different sector priorities. So this shows that spending size doesn't always correlate with system quality or accessibility. And the last, number 6, that is labor force participation rate. So the graphic in this variable shows that countries like Madagascar and Tanzania had very high labor force participation rate, possibly due to a large informal sector. And on the other hand, Algeria and Jordan had much lower rates, often influenced by structural unemployment or low female labor participation. So the developed countries such as the US and Germany showed more stable moderate participation rate.
Good day everyone, my name is Asman Zaili Binjun, number matric 99115. Today I will be presenting about the objective of the study. The first one is to analyze the relationship between government spending and economic growth GDP. Next is to evaluate the role of public investment in enhancing economic productivity. The third one is investigate the impact of education spending on human capital, development and economic growth. Next is to assess the effect of healthcare expenditure on labor force, productivity and economic output. And the last one is to analyze the relationship between labor force, participation and economic growth, GDP. Now I will present about the issue of the project. For the first one is government spending and economic growth. Government spending played a key role in supporting economic growth. It helped drive demand, build infrastructure and fund essential service. For example, infrastructure projects like roads and public transport create jobs and improve productivity, which contribute to GDP growth. In 2019, many countries experienced strong economic performance due to active public investment. However, if spending is too high and not managed well, it can lead to budget deficit and rising debt. This can reduce future investment and slow down the economy. Therefore, government spending must be efficient and focus on productive sector to have a positive long-term impact. Next is public investment. Public investment is vital for long-term development. It includes spending on infrastructure, energy and technology, which lay the foundation for a more efficient and modern economy. Such investment not only create jobs but also increase productivity and attract further investment. Public investment also help reduce inequality by funding education, healthcare and affordable housing. In 2019, countries that invest strategically in these areas saw improvement in economic output and social inclusion. But if projects are properly managed or influenced by politics, they may result in wars and cooperation. So, successful public investment depends on good planning, transparency and accountability. Third one is education spending. Education is a powerful tool for economic development. Investing in education improves human capital, productivity and innovation. Countries that allocated more funds education in 2019 were better prepared for technology change and had a more skilled workforce. This helped reduce unemployment and support long-term growth. However, high spending alone is not enough. What matters is the quality and fairness of the education system. If funds are missed out or access is unequal, the benefit may be limited. To be effective, education spending must focus on quality, accessibility, and matching skill with market needs. And the second last is healthcare expenditure. Healthcare spending directly support economic growth by improving worker health and reducing absenteeism. A healthy workforce is more productive and can contribute more consistently to the economy. In 2019, countries with higher healthcare investment were better equipped to manage public health issues and show stronger resilience. However, rising healthcare costs, especially in aging societies, can strain government budgets. If not controlled, it may affect spending in other key areas. However, equitable access to healthcare helps reduce social inequality, which improve overall participation and output. So, healthcare spending must be well planned and inclusive to benefit the economy. The last one is labor force participation. Labor force participation refers to how many people are working or actively seeking work. The higher the participation, the more output a country can generate. In 2019, countries that encourage more women and youth into the workforce saw stronger economic growth. Supportive policies like childcare, flexible working hours, and access to education help increase participation. However, challenges like gender equality, lack of opportunities, and job quality still limit many people from working. Improving labor participation is just about name number. It's about making to the job market inclusive, accessibility, and supportive so more people can contribute effectively to the economy.
Today, I'll walk you through a concise literature review on the economic impacts of government spending, public investment, education, healthcare, and labor force participation. Let's dive in. Starting with government spending. Government spending linked to economic growth is complex, as outlined by Al-Qadi and Ismail in 2019. 6 theoretical perspectives shape the debate. Ricardian equivalence suggests a neutral effect as people anticipate future tax hikes. Wagner's law flips this, arguing growth drives spending. The Keynesian school sees a positive impact through demand stimulation, especially in recessions. Conversely, Barrow's school suggests productive spending like on infrastructure boosts growth, while non-linear theory points to an optimal spending threshold. Empirically, results vary positive in countries like Korea and Zimbabwe, negative in high-income nations, and non-linear elsewhere. Next, public investment. The author highlights two key views. One sees it boosting private sector productivity via crowding in, while another wants excess investment cuts out private effort. Keynesian emphasized its role in stimulating demand during downturns, but neoclassical models stress productivity neutrality, and ELM framework suggest public investment drives employment through effective demand, not just wealth effects. Empirically, its positive short-term but long-term effects depend on crowding in versus crowding out dynamics. An optimal investment to GDP ratio exists. Productivity and economic conditions are critical here. For education spendings, the author explores education's role in green GDP for OECD countries. The theory ties human capital, teen education and skills to productivity and sustainable growth. Energy transition and physical investments like infrastructure strongly boost green GDP with significant coefficients. Education, especially tertiary, shows positive effects in some models, but in sectoral changes, it is less impactful. The takeaway is that energy transitions and capital investment are critical, but education's role needs targeted policies to maximize green innovation. On healthcare, Young in 2021 uses the STAR-PET model to study high expenditure countries. The environmental Kuznets curve suggests growth initially wasn't environmental degradation, then improves it. Industrialization and economic growth increase the ecological footprint, rising healthcare costs due to pollution-related diseases. Globalization and urbanization, however, can reduce the footprint by promoting cleaner technologies. There's a feedback loop where environmental degradation drives healthcare spending, which may strain resources further. Integrated policies balancing growth, environment, and health are essential. Finally, the labor force participation. The author explores women's labor force participation in developing countries. Patriarchal land ownership, especially discriminatory inheritance law, keeps women in unpaid farm work, limiting urban job opportunities. India's Hindu Succession Amendment Act, granting equal inheritance, significantly increased women's urban migration and non-agriculture employment. Public care provision also narrows gender gaps. Reforming inheritance laws and investing in care economies are key to empowering women economically.
To begin our methodology section, this study adopts a cross-sectional research design, focusing on data from 101 countries for the year 2019. All our data are sourced from the World Bank Group, ensuring credibility and consistency across the country. The dependent variable in this research is gross domestic product (GDP) and growth rate. The independent variable include government spending, public investment, education spending, health spending, and labor force participation rate. To ensure robustness in our analysis, we examine the data in both linear and double logarithmic form. The double log model was prepared due to its lower coefficient of variation, indicating greater model stability and improved interpretability of elasticity between variables. Descriptive statistics such as mean, median, and standard deviation were used to understand the distribution of each variable. Our model specification follow a log-log functional form. This functional form allows us to interpret coefficient as elasticity, meaning we can assess the percentage change in GDP resulting from a 1% change in each independent variable. OLS minimize the sum of square residual and assume a linearity, normativity, homoscedasticity, and normality or residual. To validate the reliability of our model, we conduct the following diagnostic tests, which are t-tests to assess the statistical significance of individual variable. Next, f-test to evaluate the overall significance of the model. Thirdly, Jacobi test to check if the residual follow a normal distribution. Next, Breuer-Corpret RM test to test for autocorrelation in residual. Next, Breuer-Corpret test to check if the heteroskedasticity. And lastly, Ramsey RESET test to detect any model misspecification.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jambi Anak Frankie, and I'll be presenting the result and hypothesis testing section of our econometric study. This section presents the key result from our econometric analysis. We will walk through the regression output, test of significance of variable using t-test and f-test, and also assess model reliability using several diagnostic tests such as the Jacob-Berra normality test, several correlation, heteroskedasticity, and functional form specification. To identify the most appropriate model for our regression analysis, we compare 5 functional forms using the coefficient of variation. The double long model had the lowest coefficient of variation, which indicates more stable and consistent estimate. Therefore, we selected the double long model as the best fit for modeling the relation between LGDP and its predictor. Next, for this section, I will talk about descriptive statistics of variables. This table summarizes the key statistics for our variables. GDP has an average growth of 3.72% and is highly positively skewed. Most independent variables like government spending, investment, education, and health show signs of non-normality. However, labor force participating rate LFPR is nearly normally distributed based on the Jacob-Berra test, making it a strong candidate in the model. Here are the OLS results. The R-square is 0.1706, meaning about 17% of the variance in GDP is explained by the model. The F statistic is 3.908 with a p-value of 0.0029, showing the model is statistically significant overall. Among the independent variables, only health spending and labor force participation rate and significant at the 5% level. Health spending have a negative relation with GDP, while labor force participating has a positive one. The t-test evaluates the significance of each variable. Only health spending is statistically significant in a negative effect of GDP. Other variables such as government spending, inflation, education, and LFPR show no individual significance as their p-value are all above 0.05. The F-test checked the overall significance of the model with a F statistic of 3.9083 and a p-value of 0.0029, which reject the null hypothesis and conclude that at least one independent variable significantly affects GDP. Even if some individual variables are not significant, the model as a whole is. The Jacob-Berra test result has a statistic of 41.85 and a p-value of 0.000. This means the residual are not normally distributed. However, since we have more than 100 observations, this valuation has limited effect under the large sample assumption. For the next slide, to check for autocorrelation, we use the brush Godfrey test. The results show a p-value of 0.7245, which are greater than 0.05, so we fail to reject the null hypothesis. This suggests that our model does not suffer from serial correlation and the residual are independent. The heteroskedasticity test show mixed results. While one of the test statistics indicates some inconsistency, most of the results show the variance of residual is constant. Therefore, we assume homoskedasticity, but we recommend using reduced standard error for more reliable inference. Okay, let's move to the last part for the result and hypothesis. The Ramsey RESET test check for functional from misspecification. The p-value is 0.8568, which is well above 0.05. Therefore, we fail to reject the null hypothesis, indicating that our model form is appropriate and does not suffer from omitted variable bias. That's all for me. Thank you.
In conclusion, the most immediate and impactful strategy to foster economic growth is increasing labor force participation. Equally important is ensuring that government, healthcare, and education spending is not just substantial but efficient and also strategized. Inclusive policies that prioritize human capital development and long-term investment in productivity are also critical, although the study faced some limitations such as issues with heteroskedasticity and also normality. It provides a strong starting point for evidence-based policy making. Future research should aim to use panel data and also include the broader variables like institutional quality and also the technological advancement. Ultimately, promoting inclusive growth of making smarter use of resources is a part of towards a sustainable economic development. Thank you. Based on the study findings, we propose the three policy recommendations. First, increase the labor force participation should be a top national priority. Since the labor force participant rate showed a statistically significant positive impact on GDP growth, government should focus on removing employment barriers, especially for marginalized groups, and also while promoting the skill development inclusive hiring practices. A more active and skilled workforce directly contributes to productivity and growth. Second, even though the public investment and general government spending were not statistically significant in this model, they are also a vital play in this long-term role. It's important to make spending more effective by focusing on strategic sector like infrastructure and also innovation. Enhancing transparency and also accountability will also help to ensure public funds and also deliver the real value of the work. So for the third recommendation, we would like to improve the efficiency of health and education spending. The goal should not be how much we spend, but how the outcome we achieve, particularly in the health and human capital development for disadvantaged communities. These are the foundational pillars for sustained economic progress. Thank you.